Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who is really going to help us get a better understanding of a lot of dynamics that are happening in the workplace that are ultimately impacting the customer and what we need to do about them. Dr. David Arrington was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he was raised in a loving and nurturing 2-parent home with one older brother. His parents supported his love of computers, and at the age of 11, they bought him his first computer, a Texas Instruments TI-185.
TI-99 4A, baby.
He spent hours in his room writing short code and just learning what it could do. After graduating from college with a degree, of course, in computer information systems, David accepted a job as a systems analyst at Exxon Chemical in Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. Here, he got his first real introduction on how to lead or not. And he moved on from Exxon a few years later, taking the lessons he learned there and stepping out into the entrepreneurial world and started his first business, a small design company. Mm-hmm. A couple of years after starting his venture, his wife shared the news his second son was on the way. David went back into corporate America and was hired by Schlumberger Holmes.
So close. Schlumberger Omnis.
Thank you very much.
No worries. You're not the first one. It's okay.
After a short time there, he was promoted to the position of worldwide recruiting manager. Yep. The position took him across the country and around the world. This experience clarified what leading both virtually and locally really meant. With a sudden desire to do something totally different, David and his family moved to Michigan, where he started and completed his Master of Divinity and started his pastoral career. 12 years, 4 states, and a doctorate in strategic leadership with an emphasis in leadership coaching later. He left this position, taking all the experience he learned about leading, motivating, and engaging volunteers and started his company, Arrington Coaching. This is where David thrives and is fulfilling his stated mission to impact an entire generation of leaders. He does this by helping executives realize their vision and create sustainable change through executive coaching and leadership training. This year has been a whirlwind. In addition to writing his book, Promotable, Demonstrate Your Value, Highlight Your Potential, Land Your Next Promotion, he and his team just launched ArringtonTraining.com to make his practical teaching style and proven methodology available to more leaders and teams. In his spare time, Dr. David Arrington enjoys watching movies, TV shows, and listening to great music when he's not watching a great or terrible movie with his beautiful wife, Maria, of 23 years, and 3 adults. You might catch him nodding his head to old school rap or playing a PC action adventure game. Dr. David Arrington, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Absolutely, Jim.
I'm glad you're here. Okay, so now what you're going to share with us today going to impact the customer experience?
Well, everything a leader does impacts the organization. It almost trickles down. So if you have solid leadership at the top and set those priorities that the customer is important from that perspective, people throughout the organization will follow that line. No one in your organization is ever really going to go higher than the bar set by the leader. So leadership is critical in order to make sure that everything beyond that leader, everyone who that leader functionally works with, is doing what's best for the customer.
Okay, when you say that, I start thinking about what if you said nobody's going to set the bar higher than that. Mm-hmm. So what if the bar isn't high enough, but that person doesn't realize it? What do you do?
That's where I come in and I help those individuals. I was just brought in to a major company to help a VP who didn't realize that he could set the bar higher. So what I did with him over 6 to about 9 months was not only help him create a stronger team, but also help him raise the bar, raise the temperature for his team. And that had incredible results. I'm actually doing a case study with him about the outcomes we achieved in such a short amount of time.
Okay, so when you start talking about that, and I know you can't, of course, we're not naming names or anything like that.
Yeah, I can't go into too much detail just yet. Yeah,
exactly. But from a scenario perspective, when you start thinking about what moved the needle the most and had the greatest impact, and because you had it quick, what was it?
2 main things. One was clarifying what leadership was with that leader, helping them to understand where their personal gaps were. That was critical. And then, because most people, so before I go to and then, because most people see everyone else's flaws and blame it on the rain and everyone else blame, or I'll throw a more a deeper cut Michael Jackson, blame it on the boogie reference in there. So what they do is they point outward and see everyone else's flaws, and they try to push all that off on everyone else. My role is fundamentally to ask those tough questions so they can see their own gaps. And once we can see those gaps, we can address them. And that's what we did. Secondly, big thing was making sure their meetings worked more effectively, because most people discount the value of meetings. In my opinion, a meeting is where you really get to demonstrate leadership for an entire team. And most people don't have plans for meetings. And meetings just are things that are on the calendar that everyone dreads. But what we were able to do is we were able to shift his meetings from being time sucks, time vacuums where everybody walked away pretty much with nothing changed, no follow-ups, to very tactical. What are we doing this week? How are we moving the ball? And even more strategic, where are we going over the next few months? Those types of meetings brought everyone else on board and allowed people to experience the accountability that would help them to start hitting their targets and therefore overall bring the entire team up.
You know, as you're saying that, I've received some feedback this week from somebody, a couple of people who were saying how, you know, for me, I'd like to really talk about the facts, try to, you know, point out the things that we need to address and say, okay, this is the evidence, right? Because otherwise we just throw our emotion at it. And, you know, much like that person not taking or realizing, you know, that they had an issue that they need to address. So when we start talking about the customer, when we start talking about internally, if we're not, you know, looking at the data, oftentimes we'll, you know, start doing other things, which includes deflecting, right? And so I prepare. Even when we were having this interview, I mean, I said I went through your book and I took these notes, and you know, I prepare and I get that feedback from a lot of my guests. But I also shared with you that, you know, sometimes that could be quite intimidating. But however, this is what I see and why I do it is because otherwise, if you don't prepare, you end up spiraling at a much faster velocity. You go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and then what does that do? It's more meetings and meetings because you have no clarity. So how do you break that cycle?
By addressing it. And for many leaders, they don't realize that that's an Achilles heel. That's why I created a free course on arringtontraining.com. There's a free course on leading meetings that don't suck, right? Because so many leaders do what they basically reproduce the dysfunction they've experienced in other meetings into their own meetings. They just keep reproducing it because meetings are an afterthought. Meetings are something we have to do versus thinking about why you're having this meeting. What are the outcomes? Who needs to be there? We just keep inviting the same 20 people who come in, sit here, resent being away from their real work for whatever this meeting was set for, an hour, which always stretches into 2.5 hours. I kid you not. I was working with another client years ago that was a nonprofit CEO. I was working with her and her leadership team. And when we first got together, I said, here's what I'm going to promise you now. Right now, your leadership team meetings are 3.5 hours long. When I'm done, they'll be under an hour. When I finished that engagement, she emailed me like the week later and said, David, I'm sorry, we're not there yet. Our meeting went to an hour and 15 minutes. Right. So I said, are you kidding me? You're joking, right? That's huge progress because you get way more done. You give everyone their most valuable resource back. You give everyone their time back. They walk out of that environment with clear direction. They know exactly what they're supposed to do. They're able to demonstrate that they're rock stars and bring back exactly what everyone's expecting them to. And they're able to show in that next meeting, here's what you asked me for, here's what I did, or here's why I couldn't get it done because I need X, Y, and Z. So it streamlines the process from meetings that are just frustration and aggravation engines to actually being solid accountability vehicles that allow your team to perform, where you're not the one that has to do everyone's job because you're the only one that understands what needs to be done.
Okay. So now people may be sitting there and saying, as they're watching, listening, and like, well, why are we talking about this? We're talking about impacting the customer experience. And I think it's a critical point. So for me, when I start thinking about, how is the customer get affected by that? Well, if our leaders are in meetings all day long, there's no way we're developing our people. There's no way we're getting connected to the customer through and via them. And then, so therefore we become more distant from the customer and from our staff.
Yeah, that's definitely one. There's one study that said, I think most managers spend 60 to 70% of their work week in meetings. So that, just imagine the wasted time. Just imagine the opportunities, the opportunity cost of being in all those meetings. And like you brought up, not developing your people because you're too busy with the bureaucracy of getting things done, which fundamentally is broken because everyone you ask out of those meetings will say it's a waste of time. So you're not getting things done.
You're not. I mean, it's just, it's that velocity thing that I was talking about, spiraling velocity. Okay. So I want to ask you, on top of the world, best day ever. What does that mean?
Oh, that's my personal philosophy that whenever you ask me, even when you greeted me at the beginning of this, before we started recording, you said, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm on top of the world, having the best day ever. And you're like, no, that's your normal, that's your shtick. It's actually not a shtick. It's honest to goodness, the way I am every single day. And it's a choice. And that's what I have to be very clear about. It's a choice. I like everyone. I have bad days too, but I choose to focus on what's good that's going to come out of a bad day, or what, tomorrow will be better. And when I say I'm on top of the world, having the best day ever, I'm choosing my state of mind. I'm reiterating it to myself. I'm reinforcing it to myself. And whenever I say it, without fail, people smile, because now I'm helping you have a great day. Or they think about their day and they'll say either, I'm not there, I wish I was, or wow, that you just made my day. Or some people say, I wish I could say that. And depending on the person, I'll say, well, yeah, it's just words. You can say those words if you choose to, but because they've chosen that it's not their best day ever, basically they won't. And the reason I say on top of the world, best day ever, because today is the only day I have. I don't have yesterday. It's gone. Tomorrow, don't have that. I just have right now, which is why I have to own that right now is my best day ever. I'm not pining for the past. I'm not just so focused on tomorrow. I'm actually trying to be present in this moment.
I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, there's so much depth and versatility to that, from a both, a psychological, neuro, programming perspective, from a perception, impact, and engage. I mean, there's a lot of effect on that people oftentimes just aren't aware of. And so they'll even say, and like my son, who's really critical of himself, I know where he gets it from. He'll say things about, being stupid and foolish and, I am. And I'm like, dude, you may think that inside, but once it comes out of your mouth, you've essentially etched it. Right.
You're reinforcing it.
Things too. We all do. I'm assuming that everybody thinks it. Some of us just more than others.
Well, just for here, one more second, that negative self-talk is something we all struggle with. And it's one of the things I've had to basically tell that negative side just to shut up. everybody has it. For a long time, I would ask myself, who wants to hear me? Who wants to, when as a speaker, who wants to believe me as a trainer and then executive coach? And once I got past a lot of that stuff, the world opened up and I saw more opportunity than obstacle. And for a lot of people, they get stuck in the rut of beating themselves up. And I often say, you wouldn't let someone talk about your spouse or a dear friend the way you let yourself talk about yourself. The way you talk about you wouldn't let anybody get away with that if it was someone you cared about. So who do you care about more than you? So you should be careful and very aware of what you're telling you about you, because believe it or not, it's going to come out in the wash. It will definitely, okay, using another old metaphor, those chickens will come home to roost.
Most definitely. Okay, so we've talked about development. We've talked about impacting the customer experience. We've talked about, things that are taking us away from that with meetings and the dysfunction associated with that. And feedback, one of my key mentors, Dr. Shema Khannan, talks about that being one of the most, misused, underused, misunderstood, really, I'd say tools in your toolkit, if you just want to talk about it that way. But what are some of the secrets that you've learned about feedback?
So again, there's a free course on this one on arringtontraining.com, because these are two very prolific leadership problems, right? Feedback is often underused. People don't know what to say, when to say. They don't want to be the bad guy, the bad lady. So they'll let things go until they hit a breaking point, and then they'll just give people both barrels. People can, I had one of my first supervisors way back at Exxon, he said, it's bad. People can take bad news. It's no news they can't handle. So if you tell me that I have room for improvement, I can live with that. If you make it like everything's good and then all of a sudden you just come in and dump 5 years of problems in my lap, and that's overwhelming. I can't deal with that. I resent that now. So if you're going to give feedback, which every leader needs to, and honestly, if we're going to talk about leadership and accountability, feedback isn't just a hierarchical from your boss to you kind of thing. In a perfect world, it would be peer-based, where I could walk over to a peer and say, hey, I need your help with this, or next time when you provide me this, here's how I need it. But because we're on such eggshells with everyone, and we don't want to upset relationships because everyone is super, kind of touchy-feely. Don't tell me what I'm going to do, or I'm not going to say that because I'm not their boss. We limit the success of our organizations because we're not open to sharing an insight in a very positive and helpful way. The other thing I would share, because there's a lot about feedback, it needs to be positive. Don't do the nice thing and then the good news, bad news thing. Basically blend them together. Don't come in and say, well, I want to talk to you about a couple things. The good thing is, because they're not listening to the good stuff. They're waiting for the bad stuff. That's just human nature. We tune out the good stuff and we obsess over the bad stuff. So when you're having your feedback, make your feedback more frequent. Make your feedback positive more than negative, and show where people can improve versus the mistakes they made. People on your team, you need to believe that you've got qualified, competent individuals on your team. Your role as a leader is fundamentally to give them direction and then get out of the way, and then give them slight correction as they're going, so you stay on the same page and get the outcomes and get the deliverables that you're working toward. And for many leaders, they'd rather be friends than leaders. And you can be both, but you need to be more leader than friend. And what that means is they need to like you. They need to respect you. They need to want to run through brick walls for you. But that comes when they respect you and know that you're going to be honest with them, tell them what needs to be done. You're going to correct them when things are wrong. You're going to hold them accountable, and you're going to help them to grow. You're going to have their best interests at heart.
Okay. So when we start thinking about, today's world, 2020, and in the book, you address this to some degree internally, but I just want to look at it a little bit more holistically. Is it better to be employed or to be a free agent?
Oh, I would always argue that you're a free agent, whether you're employed or not. So free agency is the idea that you have portable skills. It goes back to that self-talk. So a free agent doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur. Free agent means you understand your value and you can take that value. You have portable skills that can add value in any organization. So the idea of free agency is freeing you from being more loyal to an organization than that organization is to you. And that comes from very hard-earned personal experience where I was far more loyal to an organization only to find out that that loyalty was not reciprocated. And it's one of those things where my awakening has helped a lot of my clients in the past.
Well, when we start, thinking about that portability piece, and you said something that, I kind of want to, put some spotlight onto, is you mentioned something about portable, and then for any organization. Mm-hmm. I don't see that being the case in one way, and maybe we can provide some clarity upon that when we start talking about fit. Right. I think fit, unfortunately, traditionally fit was, hey, you got the right skills and I need, people to have this experience. I think fit is taking on a very, very different meaning today. And when it comes to culture, I'm not so sure that people really understand how to connect for fit, to find fit. Mm-hmm. And then therefore, based on the candidate's skills, maybe say, okay, it's really who they are as a human being and their value system and how they approach work that's most important. And while they don't have these particular skills, I could use that type of person. Sure.
So you can train skills, but you can't train personality. And when it comes to being a free agent, part of that is understanding that every organization isn't for you. Every culture is not going to make you feel at home. When I was with Exxon, it was very restrictive to me. It didn't feel like somewhere I could build a career. When I was at Schlumberger, I could have stayed there for the rest of my career. It was far more entrepreneurial, far more freedom, far more ability to get things done versus checking the boxes that I felt was all was required of me at Exxon. So when it comes to that, it's two things. One, as someone who's hiring, you're looking at those fit elements, you're identifying that. But as someone who is a free agent, you're also interviewing the company to see if this company is going to be a fit with you and where you want to go as a human being. Do you want to have that time do you want to have the flexibility and freedom to raise your family, or do you want to do the 80-hour a week job? Those are questions that everyone has to answer for themselves. And there are going to be people that want to do the 80 hours a week. That's just the way they're designed. They just want to stay there and be on the grind. And there are going to be other people who would like to do 40, 50 hours and have that security of a good job and being able to spend time with their kids. So that point and question about fit and culture is going to be a very personal one. So everyone's going to have to come to that idea of what a good company would be for them. And a lot of times you have organizational culture conflated with foosball tables and ping pong tables. That's not culture. Those are perks. Those are benefits, but that's not culture. Culture is far more than a foosball table. It's how that organization treats its people. What I like to say about organizational culture is it's their internal branding. It's the way you talk about you to you within the organization. How do they feel about their employees? How do they treat their employees? Are you just cogs? Are you humans? Are you people that we're trying to develop and position for greater responsibility in the organization? Those are all questions that you, as someone who's a free agent, need to be asking of that organization in the interview process as you're exercising your free agency.
Well, even if you say that, though, I'm starting to think about the conversation that we had off mic where we talked about superficial and people just splashing the water on top and not getting any depth. And there's too many times when you start talking about culture is, people really haven't identified the core pillars and values that are wrapped around it. And if they have, they don't know how to get to those core pillars. Like talk about, transparency, but they don't really know what that means and how to get there. And this is what we do from a behavior perspective in order for that to happen. trust, what does that really mean?
Mhm.
And so I think that's the ongoing work that has to continue to be going. But if I'm stuck in a meeting all day long, it ain't going to happen.
And also you've got people who are in jobs right now that feel as though they can't be their full self because the culture doesn't allow it. So to those folks, I would encourage them to start trying to change the culture within their sphere of reference, their circle of accountability. How can you be that culture agent there where you are? Because that also will trickle down out of your team into other areas and eventually to the customer as well.
Okay, so what is a 200 IQ question?
So a 200 IQ question, because again, great reading the book, great, hit me with the book. A 200 IQ question comes from, I believe, the chapter on your boss's goals. When you are a team player, you're not just thinking about your personal success. And I know that sounds very obvious, right? But for many of us, we go into work every day and we're trying to show that we are a high flyer. A 200 IQ question, this is one that I share in the book, is asking your boss what their goals are and how you can help them achieve them. I've given this to a number of clients for them all to come back and say, David, they didn't even know how to answer the question, which is good. It can be good depending on the leader. If the leader's insecure, then it could be a big problem. But you need to understand who you're working with. But what it lets them know is that you're thinking about your role beyond just what you do, your job description. You're actually thinking and seeing that bigger picture. And to be promotable, to be someone that can be a free agent, that's critical. Being able to see the bigger picture beyond what you do every day puts you in an entirely different class and category and sets you on a path of greater promotability. So asking your leader, your boss, your supervisor, how can I help you succeed? Which was something I would ask every single person. And I just thought it was me, right? And then I came to find out most people don't ask that question. And that question is going to shift their perception of you from someone they have to manage to someone that is in this fight with them side by side. And that's a fundamental shift that you would want to make as quickly as possible. Now, don't ask the question if you're not willing to do some extra work. Don't ask the question and just, to throw it out there as a gimmick or as a ploy, right? You just, how can I help you? Because they're going to tell you if they know. And you need to be able to say, okay, what part of that can I take off your plate and, add to my plate if you have any cycles available to help them?
Okay. So, because to me, when you're talking about that, those are some trust building components. Those are clarity building components.
Yep.
And even when you started talking about that, I'm like, well, that's something we could even extend to customers, but again, if we're going to take that insight, and we need to start doing something with it. So, how can I help make you more successful today or support your, efforts to be more successful today? And then take that customer insight and then drive it back into product changes, process changes, service delivery changes. And I think if more organizations were to do that in a proactive and intentional manner, their service experience and differentiation would be massive.
And the idea is you get to ask that question. It's a golden question. You get to ask it once, maybe twice, because if you ask it and then don't do anything, you may get the opportunity to get a do-over. But if you ask it a second time and still don't do anything, by the third time you ask it, you're just starting to engender resentment. They're going to think, why are you wasting my time with this? Because we talked about this and then we talked about it and you still haven't done anything. So you want to make sure if you're asking that question, you are poised to act on that question.
Yeah, it's like at the grocery store where now they've become programmed to say, "Did you find everything you were looking for today?"
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want fries with that?
Mm-hmm.
All those things that now have become so robotic and cliche. And I think it's time for a change up and an update and a do-over for a lot of organizations that want to differentiate. Okay,
sure.
So when you start talking about stretching. Stretching yourself, stretching your performance, trying to take it to, a higher level, trying to stand out, trying to be extraordinary. If you were to say, people actually putting forth that effort and stretching, what percentage of people would you say that are actually stretching themselves?
So that's a tough question to answer because everything changed in the last 12 months, right? So stretching yourself, what it really gets down to, and I would flip the question versus from a broad perspective, macro look at how many people are stretching, to a more micro, how can I take the right steps to stretch myself? Right. So what I would say is stretching yourself puts you in again, like that 200 IQ question, it puts you in a different place. It mentally, and within your organization, you're perceived differently. I had a client talking to me yesterday, or no, it was last week, about a move she took based on stretching herself. Right. And it was, when we were talking, it was so funny. She just held my book up and said, David, this. And I was like, are you kidding? But I understood she was talking about stretching herself. Are you willing to make a lateral move if it gives you greater visibility? Are you willing to take on another assignment if it gives you greater visibility? Are you willing to take on a little bit more responsibility if it gives you more visibility? It may not turn into a paycheck today, but something that you can see in a paycheck today, but it may give you the visibility you need for tomorrow and the next day. And within a short period of time, that visibility turns into opportunity. And that's what happened with my worldwide recruiting manager. I was just a network engineer. I showed up within 6 months. They asked me, would I take on this role? And being young and naive, which I'm still glad to say I'm not as young, but I would still say yes to it. Am I naive? I don't know. We'll live with that. But being young and naive, I said yes. And once I was done with that assignment, because I crushed that assignment, they asked me, David, where in the company do you want to go? And not just in Schlumberger Omnis, but where in Schlumberger Global do you want to go? So that's where the young part came. And I was like, I'm good. I just want to go back. I could have picked any position, any organization, and they would have made it happen within a matter of weeks. So that's what happens when you take stretch assignments. And the question is, are you comfortable and complacent now, which is cool? Are you in a good spot and you don't want to stretch? You're where you want to be. You're at the pinnacle of the success you need, because for that, everyone, that's going to be different. Or are you still trying to climb? Are you still trying to make a mark for yourself, make a name for yourself? And if you are, then identifying stretch opportunities and stretch responsibilities is going to be critical. You just have to move it. And this is an ego thing. For many of us, if my next role doesn't have a better title or more money, then I don't want it. But you have to look at it for some of the intangible things like visibility, who you're going to work with, knowledge about the organization. Will I learn a whole different part of the organization if I go here? Because when you're trying to be promotable, as you move up the ladder, decision makers, they are going to be looking for individuals who have that bigger picture understanding of the organization. They're going to look at your resume within the company to see if you've just been doing your job or if you stood out and you've taken on added assignment. And then how did you do when you took on that added assignment? That's going to give you that upward mobility that most people dream about, but aren't always anxious to work for. So I would say sometimes you got to stow the ego and take a job that may feel like a lateral, may feel like the same amount of money. But if you're learning something, again, going back to portable skills, you can take this information with you anywhere. Those are the kind of assignments you'd want to be on the lookout for.
Well, without a doubt, when we start talking about this type of work, when we start, looking at, the impacts that it has internally and externally, it's very inspirational. But we have to stay, attentive and focused on the right things. And one of the things that helps us do that on the show are quotes. Is there a favorite quote that you like that you can share?
Oh man. Yeah. The first one that jumps to mind is a Bill Gates quote that I like. It says, we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in a decade. And to me, that's fundamental, because we always want things so fast that we forget we're going to be here for the long term. And so going right to the point I was just making, if you don't get the immediate gratification of that higher paycheck, guess what? You're going to get the long-term opportunity that visibility, that new information, that the broader relationship base within your organization will provide.
Now, there's times when you start talking about this pivoting and changing and, realizations and, the different milestones and where we are. I mean, there was a whole lot of factors that went in there. There's times where, we've, had some lessons to learn when we had to make some changes, some realizations in order to get over the hump. Is there a time, where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
I'm just running through all of the hump moments. I guess, last year was tough. That was, there've been a few. And so let me try to narrow it down. When you're talking, are you talking personally or professionally?
This is part where I don't like to frame people. I mean, I want you to share whatever comes to you and you have passion about. Oh,
okay. So pivoting, I guess recently there's been a lot of things that have happened. And I'm just trying to, and to be honest, I'm just trying to focus in on one because that one caught me off guard, which is good. I appreciate it. Pivoting last year, moving everything online, moving more of my courses online, moving more of my practice online. That was something we were already doing, but it just got accelerated into 2020. And with everything that happened, another big pivot was me hiring a coach. Again, as a coach, as an executive coach, I believe in coaching. So I keep a coach. I have a coach pretty much all the time. And last year I hired a specific coach for sales to help me grow the business even more because I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly learning. But yeah, we've had some personal moments like last year in the middle of a pandemic. We had what looked like a little leak, which ended up like wiping our whole first floor out. And, like we were all kind of jammed upstairs for 4 or 5 months while all of downstairs was unusable, kitchen and everything. So there've been a lot of pivot moments. We had a fire back in 2013 where we lost pretty much everything. So we've had a few pivot moments. That's why when you asked me for one, my brain was like, okay, which one? That's why I was trying to get you to kind of narrow it down. But yeah, it's constantly, every time I'm forced to pivot, it gives me an opportunity to reconsider and question what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and can I do it better? So I always look at those pivot moments as opportunities for insight, reflection, and a moment where I can shift and move my business and myself personally a little bit further forward.
Well, and the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about an Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. And all right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, David, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. And I'm going to ask you several questions. And your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Dr. David Arrington, are you ready to hoe down?
I am, Jim.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Time. That's pretty much my number one thing. Time.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Treat people the way you'd want to be treated.
What is one of your favorite tools that you believe helps you lead in business or life?
One of the best tools is asking great questions.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Promotable on your show notes page as well.
The book I'm reading right now, I'm almost done with it, is Ready, Fire, Aim. So I'd recommend that one. It's good.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net and searching David Arrington. Okay, David, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
I would take back so many ideas. So what I would take back with me is the understanding of where I am right now. If I could only take one thing, I would take today and everything I've gotten right now and take it back. So therefore I'd be able to move a lot more quickly.
David, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a blast, Jim. You can find me at arringtoncoaching.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I know Jim will drop a LinkedIn link there. Let me know you heard about me on the show. And I also want to share that we just opened up the Leading Under Pressure community, which is a community for executive leadership development, where we've got courses, coaching, a community, and accountability for executives who need to make sure that they become more promotable. You can find that at arringtoncoaching.com/LUP. There you go.
David Arrington, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and the Fast Leader Legion honors you, and thanks you for helping us get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.